Okay, the next one is the ES1. Now here's a little more complicated, but the same rules still apply. Over here we have our octaves. Here we have our oscillators. Now we have an option of picking between two oscillators, and we can mix the two. So here's our first one. If we pull it all the way up, it'll use this oscillator. All the way down, use that oscillator, and we can mix the two. Now you can see a few more options for what kind of waves you can be using as oscillators. You've got the normal sawtooth or triangle. Then you have what do you call an inverted, like a top to down sawtooth. Then you have a square. You have an irregular square, and down here you have some more options. Just different shapes for oscillators that are very useful. Over here you have your filter section, so you have your cutoff and your resonance, just like you've seen before. Your drive and key, I wouldn't worry about this. The 24, 18, 12, this is kind of not very important, but I'll just show you anyway. The concept is you're using Q, what's called Q. If I take a look at this, low pass filter, the Q, see here you have 48, now 24, 18, 6. This is just changing the slope of this cutoff point, and that changes the sound somewhat. But that's what these numbers are for. Over here you have the amplifier, and this, when I turn this all the way up, then depending on how hard I hit the keys, it's kind of like a velocity volume, will determine the range, or this whole thing determines the range that I have at my fingertips to change with my velocity. If I were to decrease the range, then I can, for example, in this situation, I can only hit the higher volumes. If I pull it down, I can only hit the lower volumes within this range. If I have no range, then I'm only going to be hitting this volume level. This kind of works. This thing over here kind of works with the same concept, but it applies this is your range to use with velocity, but you're going to be affecting the ADSR down here. Your gate ADSR is just using ADSR. Gate R, you're using just the release of the ADSR. A, gate, and R is just A and using R. Now you can look up a lot of these things in the manual, and it'll explain a little bit more about all these features. So if you need some more details, just take a look in there. Okay, here's your glide. So that'll glide your notes from one note to another. Right here is your LFO, or your low frequency oscillator. Now you can apply different types of low frequency waves or different shapes with this little thing. We'll just stick with this. Right here is how fast the oscillator is going to be affecting it. See how it goes all the way, it actually goes up to 24 Hertz. So these are low frequency waves that are affecting your initial sound to make it vibrate. Now it says INT via wheel. So when you use the mod wheel, it's going to be initiated. So let me pull up this range so that the mod wheel can use the full range, and I click on pitch. So when I press a note and I move the mod wheel, you're going to hear it oscillate. Now if I close this range, obviously just like all these ranges and concepts, it's only going to go between this range. Or if I pull the range down, that's as far as it's going to go. But the concept here is that you have you can control the amount, the type of wave that you use, and you can control these parameters with that mod wheel. So let me show you some other things. Here's the rate. Now the rate can go the other way, but this is where you lock to time, where you lock to a quarter note, 16th note, 8th note. This will lock to actual time depending on the tempo. If I change the actual wave type, So you can see how these are different types of shapes of waves being applied to the pitch. You can also, for example, if I want to affect the cutoff, instead of this cutoff, instead of the pitch, I can do that too. And I'm moving the mod wheel up and down to affect it or not affect it. Now, I could do that up here. And that's essentially the same thing, but it's much harder to do it that way. So you can use an LFO to get a more accurate representation of what you want. You can do the volume. So you can see with all these different options, you can do a lot of really interesting things. Up on this side, you have INT via velocity. So let me pull up the range so you can see. Now I'm going to press pitch. Now what this is going to do is when I press down different velocities, when I press down softer or louder, the pitch is going to change depending on how I do the velocity. So I'm only going to be pressing down the same note. So depending on the velocity is going to affect the pitch. That's kind of an interesting tool. I can do it on, but I can affect other things. I can affect the cutoff, for example. Okay, that's not showing you too much, but you can see the kind of the ideas. You have all these these options at your disposal. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, this one's a little interesting. When it's on the left side, then it kind of decays to nothing, depending on this time. And when it's on the right side, it's in the reverse direction. It takes a while to get it started, depending on what time you pick here. Okay, so that's this area. The ADSR is your normal ADSR, just like you've seen before. And that is the ES1. Okay, now let's go to the ES2. Now, if you haven't cried already from learning all this new stuff, you might cry right now because this is a beast. But don't have to worry because the same rules apply just as they have in the other ones. So over here, you have 1, 2, and 3. You have 3 types of oscillators. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. And inside of them, you can choose what type of shape you want. Not only that, but you can decide what percentage of the 3 oscillators are going to be used by this triangle. And over here you have the ability to detune or tune them, or you have a fine tuning like I mentioned before, the 100 cc's. You have on all 3, you can separately tune them or detune them. Over here you have the filter section. You have 2 types of filters. Let me turn this around so you can see it a little different. Here's the first filter, here's the second filter. You have a cutoff. Let me pick a different instrument actually. Okay, you have a cutoff and a resonance, and you have an FM and you have a drive. Drive is like your overdrive. FM is that effect that we talked about before. You can also blend in between these 2 types of filters. Over here we can use a cutoff. So you can blend between these 2. And you can turn it off with this button. Okay, so this is the filter section. Now over here you have the effects section. You can have choruses, flangers, phasers. We're going to talk about some of these effects in the next tutorial. Logic comes with some presets, effects that are really amazing. You have the volume right there. this is your XY pad. When you turn on this vector, you have some, you can make points in time. You can make various points in time, and you can change. So I go to pitch 1, turn this up, pitch 2, turn this up. Then at these points, I can change it with this Y pad just to change the pitch. I'll click, all I do is after this 500 milliseconds, at this point the pitch is going to be here. At this point the pitch is going to be here. And so through time the pitch kind of changes. It's kind of complicated, but in my list of references there's a guy named Terry Guide on YouTube, and he does a fabulous job of explaining some of the possibilities. But that's what this is used for. Okay, right here, if you click on the router, this is the modulation matrix. This shows you how you can do some extra kind of cool effects. The basic flow, these are all separate commands that you can do, but the basic flow goes from the source to the target. So from source through the via whatever you're going through, and then to the cutoff, or to the target. That's what it's going to affect. So in this case, the mod wheel is going to affect the cutoff. So as I move the mod wheel, oh, that's because this thing is down all the way. Cutoff 2. So okay, this makes more sense. That's because this was all the way on the left. So I'm going to use it so we can hear both now. So that, as I use the mod wheel, affects the cutoff of number 2, which is right here. So you click on source and you say how you want to affect whatever you want to affect, and the source is what it's going is the button or the controller that you're going to move in order to affect what it is you want to affect. Target is the actual button that you want to affect. In this case, it's cutoff. It could be pitch. It could be any number of things. If I try the pitch, then as I move the mod wheel, then it affects the pitch. You can also go and use the you can for example, you can change, in this case, the pitch with an LFO. You have 2 LFOs down here, so let's try and pick LFO 2. Let's try LFO 1. Okay, so there's a couple different options. There we go. That was actually turned around. So we are affecting the pitch via the mod wheel with the source, which is the LFO number 1. So hopefully you can kind of see that you can affect any of these buttons. You can affect cutoff. You can affect how much you have, how much you put this FM filter on, and you can affect it with these vibration or vibrato of the LFO with the LFO 1 or LFO 2. And here you have all the wave types you can use. So it gets really interesting. This is the kind of what we saw on the EXS24, or not the EXS24, the ESM1 or the ES1. What this does is, as you turn it up, it will kind of delay how long it takes for this LFO to be in effect. And this, if you go the other way, it will start using the effect, and then it will kind of ease out to not using the effect anymore. Okay. Over here you have 3 types of envelopes. Envelopes, like I mentioned earlier, are associated with ADSRs. The third ADSR is your volume ADSR. The first 2 you can use for any other thing, like on a filter or something. So that's the basics of the ES2.